A plenary debate on Europe's Western Balkan expansion.
The train from Belgrade is on its track towards Brussels.
Montenegro is leading the way, I think, amongst EU candidate countries.
There is no real alternative in the Western Balkans to EU accession.
But the liveliest exchange came on Serbia's accession.
Unfortunately, some Croatian colleagues still use this European Parliament as a polygon for, I would say, political horse trading or gathering political points for the domestic public in the year of the elections there. And this is not helpful when we are discussing the progress of Serbia.
Serbia, like other Balkan countries, has a littered history it needs to overcome for accession talks to be opened with the EU.
We have to deal with first the rule of law, better economic governance, the reform of public administration, the fundamental rights which have to be maintained, and of course we need a normalization in the relationship between Serbia and Kosovo.
EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has said that there will be no EU expansion for 5 years. So the march towards accession for Western Balkan countries will continue, but may take a while yet. Gaining its independence from Serbia in 2008, Kosovo's relationship with its former parent country is fractured. Its economy is in tatters and a severe brain drain sees many of its brightest leave for the European Union, despite visa restrictions which make it difficult for Kosovo. With big hurdles in its path, could Kosovo one day join the EU? Europal TV spoke to Socialist MEP and chair of the delegation for relations with Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo, Tonino Picula. Mr. Picula, welcome to the programme. Now let's kick things off with our first question. I'll just show you this.
Do you consider that leaving Kosovo as a black hole in the visa liberalization process has had an impact on the illegal immigration? And do you consider these policies correct toward Kosovo citizens?
So should visa restrictions be lifted in Kosovo?
It's very hard to say in this moment what will happen in the near future, but the fact is that Kosovo is the only country in Europe between Portugal and Ukraine which citizens need visas to step in the European Union. But this situation didn't come out of the vacuum. It's a multi-layered problem. There is a lot of requirements which Kosovo officials and administration must fulfill before the visa as requirements will be lifted. It's a lot to be done. And of course, I don't consider Kosovo as a black hole in Europe. It's the youngest, unfortunately, the poorest European country. And of course, it's the beginning of the very, very long process.
Okay, well, you mentioned there are a few problems that Kosovo has. Let's take a look at the situation inside Kosovo with this question.
Dragi gospodine Picula, visoka nezaposlenost u našoj zemlji je također jedna od čimbenika za masovne migracije Kosovara u zemljama Europske unije. Moje pitanje je ovo. Je li, ili bolje reći, hoće li biti projekata u budućnosti Europske unije koje će potaknuti ulaganje i otvaranje radnih mjesta na Kosovu? Hvala lijepa.
So can the EU help turn around unemployment?
Of course, and the European Union is already helping Kosovo to improve its economic performances. The European Union is trying to help via instruments of pre-accession assistance, IPA, and there is almost 300 different projects backed by the European Union money, and I think it's been allocated already more than 70 million euros. But it's just a helping hand. The majority of the problems should be resolved by the Kosovo governments and new elected governments. First of all, if something should be prioritized, it's improving economic performances of the...
This question concerns a recommendation for an independent investigation of alleged corruption in ULEX. How confident are you that the EU will be able to successfully investigate its own agency, and what result do you think the outcome of this investigation will have on the reform process in Kosovo and the public perception of the European Union?
I'm looking forward to see, I do hope, immediate result by independent investigators nominated by Madame Mogherini, High Representative and Vice President of Commission. I do expect thorough, swift and fast investigation which will prove or not alleged corruption cases among the ULEX, because the ULEX is the largest mission established by the European Union in order to deliver law and justice in Kosovo, to help Kosovars to become a state where rule of law is ruling. Anything else would jeopardize not only system in Kosovo, but credibility of European Union.
Okay. Now coming to our last question, this comes from the Serbian MP.
Jednostrano proglašenje nezavisnosti Kosova počiva na brutalnom etničkom čišćenju nealbanaca. Suprotno je važećem međunarodnom pravu rezoluciji 1244 i Helsinškom aktu. Kako je onda moguće govoriti o evropskim aspiracijama Kosova, a da to ne izazove presedan koji se može unutar Evropske unije opasno odraziti?
Don't keep a blind eye of origin of the European Union, because European Union started as a good idea, but a project after the atrocity done in the Second World War. So I think that idea is a genius one, because it enabled bitter enemies through the centuries to start cooperation. So I think it's first of all peace project, and of course European Union must prove itself in economic level and some other levels, but countries with a history, and tell me which country in the European Union got no history of bloodshed, of atrocities, of invading or being invaded. I think it's a, let's say, home for all European countries, and I think project of European Union will not be fulfilled until every country which citizens wants to do so become a member of European Union. Balkan is a special, of course, in that process.
Okay, Mr. Picula, thank you so much for joining us on Europol TV.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to The Debate, presented jointly in the European Parliament in Brussels by Europol TV and Nova TV from the Balkans. With me, Paul Anderson.
And me, Borjan Jovanovski. We'll be discussing the challenges, setbacks, successes, even though sometimes they are hard to see, of the EU's enlargement towards the Western Balkans. The new European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, he said, no new members under his watch, but the process rumbles on anyway.
With us in the studio are Ivo Weigl from Slovenia, a Liberal MEP, and Edward Kukan from Slovakia, who's a member of the European People's Party. A warm welcome to you both.
And from the Socialists, Mitiadis Kirikos. And from the University of Graz, Florian Bieber, who is also the coordinator of the Balkan in Europe Policy Advisory Group, project of European Funds for Balkans.
Okay, let's start off with you, Florian, and sort of set the scene, because the Balkans isn't often in the news headlines these days. Today we have progress reports from all 6 aspirant Balkans countries: Serbia, Montenegro, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Bosnia, Kosovo and Albania. If it's possible, can you give us a pencil sketch of what, in your view, the biggest advances are in the accession process, and also what the biggest obstacles are?
Well, we have 2 countries which are in talks, Serbia and Montenegro, and that is certainly a big progress, that there is a continuous enlargement process going on and the talks really matter. But then we have about 3 countries, I would say, which face serious problems. One is Bosnia-Herzegovina for internal problems, political blockades. There were elections recently, and as a result, we don't see much progress towards the European Union and reforms for that matter. We have Kosovo, which has the challenge that it's not recognized by 5 EU member states, and that eventually blocks its membership to the EU down the road, although there are many other internal problems. It's not had a government for months. And then finally Macedonia as well, which has a name dispute unresolved with Greece, and which also constitutes an obstacle and has resulted in a, I would say, increasingly authoritarian tendency within the country. And then we have a regional picture, a picture of countries which in many ways see EU moving away from them. And as a result, elites are less and less committed about EU enlargement.
90 years of Dayton Agreement, and Bosnia is still an open question. The perspective of Bosnia is still not clear. What's the problem with Bosnia?
Well, partly it's the institutional setup of Bosnia, which is creating elites which are not accountable in many ways. So elections don't resolve the problem, because essentially everybody's in power somewhere in Bosnia. So you can't really throw out politicians as easily and punish them for not governing you well. And we see this, that the elections in October didn't really bring about a whole large-scale change of politics in Bosnia.
It was hoped that the federation and the different ethnic entities would come together more closely within Bosnia and create a model which was against the way things had been during the program of ethnic cleansing and during the war. Has that happened at all?
Yes, it didn't work like that, but I want to stress that after the elections, last elections, I still think that there is a ray of hope for the country because it's clearly falling back in the process. It's lagging behind all other countries in the region. But recently there are several meaningful initiatives how to correct this. I mean the joint letter of the Foreign Minister of Germany and the UK, which contained some new, very original ideas how to change the situation and some other initiatives. And now I think they are going to be streamlined into one position of the whole EU. Friday this week, on the 5th of December, Commissioner Hahn and High Rep Mogherini are traveling to Sarajevo. So I think that this is a chance. Now is the chance for the political elite of Bosnia to show that they are interested in the European future.
I think that Europe should be more ambitious. European Union should try to come up with some common plan, with some common initiative. And I think that High Representative Mogherini is showing this will and interest, and she has the knowledge. Now it is up to how much of initiative the member states and their ministers will allow her. I think that, and I will stop with saying this, I don't think that the Dayton framework allows really to reform, to modernize the Bosnian and Herzegovinian society. It doesn't work. Dayton Agreement was good to stop the war. It is not a framework to build up a modern state.
And Mr. Kirkos, if you look at the results of the elections and see the consolidation of the entrenched positions that were first established under Dayton, I mean, what hope do you think there is for the future, or what pathway out of these elites and out of this existing system do you think exists?
I'm not an optimist that I can see any way out in Bosnia. The entrenchments, as you refer to them, are very strong, and the position there is, in my opinion, very, very difficult. That is not the case for the rest of the Western Balkans. We must not forget that these countries, as Professor explained, are already in a way to the Balkans, either by being members to be or in having specific problems to solve before becoming members. So it is a process that must be encouraged.
Let's go to Serbia, Mr. Bieber. What about Serbia? We saw recently open dilemma in Serbia whether to go towards East or to stay with Europe.
Well, I think it's partly a gamble of elites. They're saying, if you don't treat us better, we're going to look to Russia. I think statements like that of Milo Djukanovic and also statements by the Serbian government are suggesting that they want to keep good ties with Russia because that is popular in their countries, and to put pressure on the European Union. I don't think Russia is a real alternative in the region. It's not a real player. It can't really have the influence. I mean, let's not forget the Western Balkans are surrounded by the European Union, surrounded by NATO. They are an island in the European Union. But Russia can create trouble if it wants to do so.
I think there is another issue which should be mentioned in this connection, and it is a very bad economic situation of the countries, especially Serbia, when they really need some financial assistance in order to deal with the everyday issues. And Russia is ready to do that. We are not. Let's face it. If they ask for some financial assistance, EU does not have it, and Russia does. So Russia is skillfully using also this moment, and we shouldn't forget it. I agree that Russia is not such a big player, like Professor said, but the countries, I think that I believe the political leadership of Serbia and Montenegro that they sincerely want to have their countries in the EU.
Ivo Weigl?
Well, I disagree here with my colleague Kukan. Usually we agree, but this time I don't think that this kind of relation to Russia is a long-term situation in Europe. I think we should come slowly with Russia also to the normal terms. We should work on the open problems. We should insist that Russia is not allowed to violate the international law, should withdraw from the occupied territories, but in the long term, I don't accept that Europe is building a wall against Russia.
And what about on the question of Kosovo? Because if we stretch back our memories, it was Russian peacekeepers who barreled their way through Serbia into Kosovo as the first peacekeepers, in effect, in Kosovo in 1999. Does Russia have a capacity in its potential leverage with the money that Mr. Kukan was saying is potentially available to influence Serbia on the critical Kosovo question?
Well, I think Russia has always leverage also in the Middle East and elsewhere. It is a superpower and it will stay a superpower.
Okay, let's move on to that name question and bring in you, Miltiadis Kirkos. Do you think that it should be the European Union or the member states of the European Union who should act as an honest broker rather than let the two countries sort out their problems themselves, which they appear incapable of doing up to this point?
The question of the name is very clear. In my opinion, former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia, as is the official name, must choose a name that makes it very clear that there is no confusion between that part of the world and the neighbor countries. We are totally agree that the place of former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia, together with the rest of the West Balkans, are in the European Union through a process that makes these countries to be in competence with the European laws, as we saw in the Bosnian results and as we saw in the tensions that erupt in the football grounds. Nationalism is running rampant in the Balkans. So I'm not sure that this maybe that you told us, maybe this will lead to the correct direction. In my opinion, the issue of the name is used as a way of getting forces behind a nationalist idea.
I think that it makes absolutely no sense to prevent Macedonia to start negotiations.
The question for direct neighbors of the Western Balkans, northern neighbors Slovenia and southern neighbor Greece. What's your point of view? What do you think? How Greece and Slovenia use their position to spread, to promote European values in the Western Balkans?
Well, Slovenia was trying to do it in the past. I will cut it short, not to take too much of the time. But Slovenia is too small really to be a major player in Balkans, and we have been dealing with our own problems. We are on the friendly terms with everybody there, and a lot of our expertise is there. So the governmental and non-governmental assistance to the different stages of negotiation, preparation for negotiation, etc. But strategically, I don't think that Slovenia can play more a role than it is playing now.
Mr. Kirkos?
If I remember correctly, in 2004, it was in Greece, in Salonika, that took place the first...
2003.
2003, the start of the enlargement of Europe to the Western Balkans.
European perspective for the Western Balkans.
Yes. So, yes, 2004 were the Olympics and everything results on down. So, in my opinion, our position has not changed since. We are totally in favor of enlargement of the European Union for the Balkans. We want our neighbors to be in the European Union. The countries by themselves have to work hard to follow the rule of the law, the fundamental rights, the freedom of the press, the judicial integrity. So these are the rules.
Okay, we're going to go round the table with a concluding thought on the Balkans as a whole. Just 30 seconds each. We'll start off with you, Mr. Kukan. What is the price of failure? What do we stand to lose if we get it wrong?
Price will be very high, very difficult, because we want to speak about the Europe one and the whole, and without the integration of the Western Balkan countries, we cannot say that we achieved our goal, uniting Europe. That would be a very big price.
Okay, Florian?
Yeah. Well, I think the enlargement has been the big success story of the European Union. It's been really, 2004, 2007, despite all of the shortcomings, it's been able to increase in size, in numbers of countries, transform the countries with all the difficulties. And it would be a main disaster if basically the European Union would fail to complete this process and also basically step away from its success story. And that, I think, is fundamental. And if the EU doesn't do it, somebody else will have influence in that region. There is no such thing as an empty region. And that, I think, will be negative, not just for the countries of the Western Balkans, but for the European Union. To have 7 small dictators in the European Union's immediate surroundings with economic crisis can hardly be in the interest of the European Union.
Well, I think that the process of enlargement is unavoidable. If you want a common Europe in the sense of a common market, but also the place of common values, etc., the enlargement should be finished with the inclusion of all European countries in European Union. Otherwise, there will be, as my friend Kukan said, a very, very high price to pay. We should not forget that enlargement and European integration is also a peace process, and as such it should be seen also in the future.
Okay. That is my idea too. The price that we will pay is the price of people, of our neighbors, living in conditions and economically and in the domain of freedoms that are not for a European, a member of the European geographic place. So the only way to move forward is through enlargement. The way we can do it is already written. We have just to follow the steps.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we have time for. I'm afraid. Many thanks to our guests for joining us, Greek MEP Miltiadis Kirkos and Florian Bieber from the University of Graz.
And Ivo Weigel from Slovenia and Edward Kukan from Slovakia. Many thanks to everyone for joining us, and thanks to you too for joining us. Goodbye.
Goodbye.